So, G6 has been the hot topic in the MLP fandom recently. I'm glad I waited instead of making a video when the rumors first started circulating because it seems like the dust has settled and we have a clearer picture of what's in the future for the MLP brand now. This magazine article from Hasbro is an authoritative, although not particularly detailed, statement on the future of the MLP brand. So let's go over it. G5 is ending. There's no room for debate on that. I don't have confirmation as to whether Tell Your Tale Season 2 will finish its run or if it has been cut short, but there is no mention of more G5 episodes in Hasbro's plans for 2025. Honestly, I think that's the right call. Tell Your Tale Season 2 has been a marked improvement over Season 1, but G5 still hasn't collected nearly the hype that it had when the movie came out. It's done too much damage to its reputation already. No matter how good it gets, at this point, the ship is sinking. Most of this article describes Hasbro's plans for 2025, which notably do not include any mentions of an animated series or a G6. They hint at a total brand evolution in 2026, so for now, I will refer to that as G6. We know very little about it. I will speculate about what I think Hasbro should do for G6, but as for what it will actually do, we can only guess for now. But honestly, I'm glad that they mentioned this at all, because with Hasbro in a bad state financially, I wasn't really sure if MLP had a future. As for their plans for 2025, I think it's fair for them to use 2025 as kind of a stopgap year, since G5 obviously fell short of expectations, and it takes a long time to develop a whole new generation. This article seems to be mostly oriented towards G1 nostalgia. I will say I'd love to see some recognition of G2 and G3. But if I have to pick between G1 nostalgia and G4 nostalgia, I'll pick G1. These plans involve fashion lines, basic fun reproductions, and trading cards, but they probably won't involve any new ponies or large-scale animations. There was a leaked animated storybook sort of thing that circulated recently. From what I can tell, it was canned. There's nothing in this article that really matches it, and honestly, I'm glad. Bringing back the main 6 of G4 is the worst thing that Hasbro could do for the brand, and I'll explain why in a moment. But first, let's consider G6. I imagine the conversation that's happening in Hasbro HQ right now is, what went wrong with G5? Why did it do so poorly that we had to cancel it after less than 4 years? It stands to reason then that in G6 they will try to succeed wherever G5 failed. The question then is, will they correctly identify what was wrong with G5? From my perspective, watching both shows and interacting with the fans, there are 3 big problems with G5. First, and easiest to fix but very important, is that the toy line just wasn't good. They weren't made to last. They kept releasing the same 4 characters over and over again, they didn't sell well, they weren't easily available after the first year or so. Hasbro needs to invest in making higher quality toys, and especially in making toys for characters besides just a few favorites that they think are the most marketable. The collectability of My Little Pony is what made it so popular in the first place. And whether you care about the toys or not, they need to get this right, because this is where Hasbro makes its money. The show is just an advertisement for the toys. If the toys don't sell, then why continue the show? Another thing that's easy to fix is the corporate mismanagement that plagued G5. It's plain for everyone to see how the quality of G5 dropped off from the movie to Make Your Mark. It seems like the main reason behind that was reshuffling, as Hasbro sold several companies that were involved in G5 and then pawned it off to someone else. The result is a game of telephone, where the studio that finally got the contract, Atomic Cartoons, had to work with a half-baked idea and too little time to finish it. Hasbro did this because they were losing money and trying to cut costs, but in the end, they still had to pay for the development of G5, and they didn't get to reap the benefits because the quality wasn't good enough for people to get invested. If they just do it right with G6, yeah, they might pay a little more up front, but they'll actually make some money off of it instead of just cutting their losses. The third and most important point that I want to make, the thesis of this video, is that G6 must stay away from G4 nostalgia. If you take nothing else from this video, all I want is to convince you that you do not want a G4 reboot. If you spend some time talking with the fans, as I've done for years, you'll know that the single most controversial thing about G5 is its relationship to G4. So imagine the controversy if they, as so many fans are talking about recently, decide to make G6 a G4 reboot. And you might be thinking that a reboot would avoid the problems of G5 because it's not set in the same continuity. It won't have the same lore issues, the plot holes, etc. Yes, but what they did with G4 characters, such as Twilight and Spike, was also controversial. There is even more opportunity for character assassination with a reboot. Imagine the controversy when anything about the G4 characters is different. The fans threw a fit about how they were planning to change Applejack in the 2017 leaks. I can already see the #NotMyFluttershy posts flooding my Tumblr feed. But let's say they do a really good job and get writers who have a deep understanding and appreciation of Friendship is Magic. They're still locked in to following G4 as closely as they can. There's no room for creativity because anything they do change will cause controversy. In essence, that would be the equivalent of Hasbro throwing up their hands and saying, "We give up. MLP peaked in 2010 and we'll never be able to top it, so why even try? Let's just milk the old nostalgia cow." In this world of reboots and sequels, My Little Pony has a rather unique strategy to stay fresh. Every decade or so, it reinvents itself. New characters, new world, new continuity, new spin on the same classic concept of cute, colorful, magical ponies. G5 was the exception. Do you really want that to be the new rule? I'm not asking G6 to be better than G4. I'm just asking it to be different, just like how G4 was different from the previous gens. That doesn't mean that they can't recycle old names and character designs. MLP has always done that. But they must not recycle whole casts like the main six or set new generations in the same continuity. That undermines MLP's strategy, limits its creativity, and lashes it down to nostalgia, just like every other franchise in the 2020s. I think G6 has a great opportunity to reuse some characters from G2 and G3, where there are really great character designs that haven't seen much limelight lately. I would stay away from the more iconic G4 characters, because if they've had so much character development already, there's no room to grow. But even if they use a few G4 characters, an entire reboot must not happen. So that's where I think G5 failed and where G6 must succeed. Will Hasbro come to the same conclusions? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe that's why they've canned the storybook thing with Twilight, Pinky, and Rainbow in it. Or maybe they'll look at G5's failure and say, you know what this needed? More G4! I did make a whole video with a more detailed list about what I wanted to see in G6 before all this recent hubbub started, and I stick by that list, so go check that out. If you still somehow think that G6 should be a G4 reboot, you're going to have to defend that position in the comments. Peace out.